Christian business owners, if you're ready to stop letting your work keep you from growing closer to God, then follow this simple plan. No business, no career, no position should hold you back from seeking a closer relationship with God. But far too often, many Christian business owners let their work life hinder them from seeking that closeness that they actually want from God. But what if your busy work and life schedule can actually help you move closer to God? And what are those obvious and not so obvious daily temptations that you might face? And how exactly do you overcome them? And what is the one single most important change that you can make that will make the biggest impact for you? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you some easy to implement ideas that you could actually start today that will help you leverage your daily work and business so that you could actually have a deeper relationship with God. Hi, my name is George, and welcome to this channel where I help Christian, entrepreneurial, and ministry-minded men like yourself to lead a thriving and missional life. And before I get into the very first point of this video, one disclaimer I want to make is that this isn't spiritual advice. This is just practical advice. But as far as growing deeper in your relationship with God, that's something that you should be probably less learning on YouTube, but more so finding that within your local church faith community. Now, if you're someone who is busy, like myself and like most everyone that you know, before we could really solve the problem of using your schedule, your work, and leveraging that to help you move closer to God, first we got to always analyze what is the problem? What are the temptations that you are likely to come across just in your everyday life? Step number one, we're going to identify the obvious and even some of those not obvious temptations. Mostly, I want to help you kind of think of what are those not obvious temptations that you come across every day when it comes to growing closer to God with the busyness that we all face. Now, the first temptation is self-dependence, and self-dependence is a good thing much of the time. Especially as men, we like to feel that we could accomplish something awesome by ourselves. That's one of the first things when we go from baby, infant to boyhood, we want to start being more independent. We want to be able to ride the bicycle without the training wheels. But as good as self-dependence is, it is also was our first temptation in the garden when the serpent tempted Adam and Eve that we could have God's knowledge of good and evil. We could have the knowledge of good and evil, that we didn't really need God. I know I'm oversimplifying that story, but that was a temptation, which was to be independent, to not have to rely on God. And self-dependence also something that could hurt your prayer life when you always think that you could solve it. And I'm guilty of this, but when you believe that you could solve an issue, sometimes that stops us from still coming to God for help with that issue, or even thanking Him. Jesus even said that apart from Him, we could do nothing. So even in solving our issues, even in our self-dependence, we can't forget that apart from Him, we can't actually be self-dependent. Thirdly, it robs us from being grateful towards God. Again, when we look around at our life or look around at our accomplishments and we see the awesome things we've done, having too much self-dependence could actually lead us to be ungrateful, to not actually giving God the praise, the thanks that He does deserve. Because, truly, again, without Him, we really couldn't have done any of it. But also, and lastly, most important, is it stills our peace during trials. We all fail. No matter how much we might plan, how much effort we might put into something, there are things that are out of our control, and there are trials that are going to come our way. And if we're too used to being dependent on ourselves, then it'll be discouraging when we come against a trial. We're far more dependent on God than we remember. Even during those trials, it'll be a lot easier to find peace, a lot quicker at least. And there is this verse here from Proverbs, which says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you, and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God." And I think that is such a important verse to always remember, that that our prayer is not to have so much that we forget about God or be so much in pain that we commit sin against God, but to kind of actually pray for God's mercy to lead us in this middle where we always stay dependent on Him with a heart of gratitude. And the second temptation that we face pretty much every day is the temptation to forget about death. I know that's kind of a weird temptation, but in our modern day, we don't experience, especially in America, especially today, we don't experience death as much as probably every other generation or culture before us. But remembering death is actually very important to moving closer to God. Since we're not exposed to the reality of death, oftentimes we don't think about the reality of eternity as much. And unfortunately, we even think that maybe there's more time on our side than there really is. But forgetting about death and thinking that there's more time, that's something that could lead us to delaying our purpose. That could lead us to delaying things that we think will always be there, whether that's a friendship, a healthy marriage, kids who love and respect us. When we think that there's more time than there really is, it can lead us to a place of regret. And another really important passage is from Psalms 90, verse 12, in the New King James. It says, "So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And being aware of the little days that we might have is something that actually will bring you wisdom. And in that wisdom will help you draw closer to God. Now, here's the benefits of remembering death, is thinking of your own death will keep you focused on what your true purpose is. Remembering death, if you ever go to a funeral or you see a movie and just the reality of death, that's something, at least for me, where I've always pondered my purpose and pondered life a little bit more. And secondly, it will also remind us that being like Christ and loving our neighbor has more eternal rewards than anything else. That is just putting life and our faith into perspective. Now, once we're aware of the temptations that we face in growing closer to God, a couple of practical tips on actually how to grow closer to God with your busy life. Now, our number one excuse is that we don't have enough time. That's my excuse, and we always hear that phrase that there's, everyone has the same amount of hours in a week. We're all on the same playing field. We all have the same amount of time. So we can't change time. We can't add more time to our day, but there are some practical things that you could do that'll help you do the best you can with what you have. Now, the first step is to pursue simplicity. I am probably one of the worst people at this. Pursue simplicity, and it's true. Sometimes to get to simplicity, you need it takes a lot of effort and complexity, but never give up on that's a goal, is simplicity, especially in our spiritual life. Now, when I say pursue simplicity, I don't mean laziness like this. Okay, this is what I mean by simplicity. My favorite ice cream is vanilla bean. It's just from Haagen-Dazs, especially a good quality vanilla bean, is just something that is simple and delicious. And I think a lot of our life, we will encounter some of the most awesome experiences and pleasures from simple things like vanilla bean or whatever. Insert your favorite fruit. And the benefits of pursuing simplicity in life, they're obvious, but I think they're still worth noting, which is a simple life provides margin for stillness. If we don't have that extra margin in our day, in our life, then we don't have that extra bandwidth to be able to pursue that stillness, to have stillness with God. And second benefit is it repels activities and projects that God might not want for you. When you're pursuing simplicity, you're going to second guess a little bit more about, should you be focusing on that project? Should you be volunteering in this area? And thirdly, it'll create momentum and fulfillment in the areas that do matter most. Your relationships, your time with God, your time with the people that do matter most, the projects, the goals, the just being faithful to those things that are meant for you to accomplish. That actually give you more momentum and more fulfillment in those areas when you have simplicity as a goal, as a principle. So here are three areas to pursue simplicity in. One, personal life management. That is going to be an ongoing skill that we're all learning, scheduling our day, preparing for the week, all of that, reading books for it. Second, I'd say simplicity of goals. Again, learning how to set goals, but even how to create a hierarchy, how to create, what are those goals that matter more, and creating those different levels. Not every goal you're going to create is equal. And again, there's many books on these topics. And thirdly is simplicity of spiritual growth. Again, that's something that you need to study and find out within your own church and faith community. But sometimes it can be overwhelming there's tons of books and tons of prayers and events and all these conferences or whatever, podcasts and all these things, but finding a simple way to grow daily and spiritually, and even if it's not fancy, but our spiritual growth sometimes is most powerful when it is simple, and it could appear mundane, but it's grounded and it's simple. And the second tip for how to grow closer to God with your busy schedule is to think of your rituals like this picture. Okay. You want to think of your rituals that not all of them are equal, right? You have on the right some big ones, some small weights, but then you have this one weight on the left that weighs as much as all of them combined. You want to keep your rituals so that your rituals keep you. And not every ritual that you have is going to be equal. It's not going to carry the same weight. Some habits will be more necessary than others. Say, for example, eating, cooking, shopping for food. Some of these habits that we do naturally as humans are very important. They're our lifeblood. They keep us alive. And I also want you to think of your spiritual growth habits as those very same things. You're not keeping your habits. You're not keeping your prayer rule. You're not keeping your spiritual routine. Those things keep you. Your daily Bible reading, that actually keeps you more than you keep it. Your daily prayer, that keeps you. And so remembering that it's actually keeping you the same way that making breakfast or dinner every day is keeping you. You're not keeping up your meal schedule for the sake of having a habit that you can mark off every day. You're doing it because you need it to fill you to be able to sustain your life. One of the single greatest lessons that I've learned lately and I'm trying to implement is when I realize that being busy is something that we will never actually be able to escape. Let me tell you what I mean. We need to actually prepare ourselves to be busy. I think realizing that busyness is something on this side of life that we do have to deal with, not because God wants us to be hectic, but because we need to be accountable for every hour of our life. There is, and it's, sometimes we learn that, idleness is something bad, which it's not good. But actually, there is this principle. The first principle I'd say that is that there is no such thing as idleness, kind of. And this is what I mean is there's this old quote that says, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but it says that either the angels will give you work to do or the demons will. There's not really like a in between. Sometimes it's the choosing, like where they say choosing inaction is a choice. It's the same thing as like are we using our time on the right things? And if we're not, then we're staying busy away from the right things. We're staying busy away from maybe what God wants us to do. And in that is, yes, idleness, but that is a form of busyness as well. Even if you had an abundance of free time, if you never had to work a day in your life, you still have to spend your time in a meaningful way. You still have to avoid temptations. We're not on here on earth. We're going to be accountable for everything, for every hour spent. And we're also not going to be able to avoid temptations in this life. So realizing that even, when we're lazy, that is a form of, being busy with work that the demons give us, the work that our temptations are giving us to waste time. That is a form of using time. But always remembering that you're going to be busy. There is a trap with that. And it's not, not every type of busyness is actually good. In fact, busyness can lead to, it actually could be a form of self-deception. And this is what I mean. That the age-old adage, if you be climbing up the ladder of success only to realize that you're kind of climbing up the wrong ladder the whole time. Sometimes we can often exchange the hard work of relationships, of our family, of conflict with others, of our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with God. Sometimes we'll trade that hard work for the easier work of industry. That's why people who have some type of work addiction, oftentimes it's to avoid working on something more uncomfortable, working on relationships, working on communication, working on healing from our, just from past stuff, right? Because not motion does not equal progress. Busyness does not equal productivity. But true progress is actually being busy with the right things, even if that means taking a break, ceasing from work, going to bed early. Those actions are progress. And one question that we could be asking ourselves is this a healthy busy or is it unhealthy busy? And you could apply that to almost anything, whether work, whether you're on the internet, on social media. Is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Are you working late for a good reason, or is this something that maybe is actually unhealthy for you to do? So if you're a Christian entrepreneur who is ministry minded, who loves God, wants to grow closer to Him, and now that you know that even with a busy life, there are temptations you could overcome, there are practical steps and principles that are worth pursuing. You might be thinking to yourself that, well, how exactly do I grow closer to God and increase my time in prayer with Him, even during my workday? And if you're interested in getting the answers to that question, then go ahead and click on this video right here